So it's March 17th, it's spring break, and the Threepenny Opera has been over for a while. Um, I did not keep up with my posting during Tech Week and the performances. I did keep up with my reading, though. So I read two plays by Sarah Kane, Blasted and Phaedra's Love. And if you know Sarah Kane's work, then you know that they were really traumatizing. I also read Stoning Mary by Debbie Tucker Green, and I read a couple more plays by Carol Churchill. So this post is going to focus more on Vinegar Tom by Carol Churchill, which is about a small town that's going through witch trials. And about the women who are being accused of being witches and just the total misogyny going along with all of that. So to start it off, there was this woman, Alice, who is the main character, and she and this man basically just like fuck on the side of the road, and then she wants him to take her to London, and he won't. And he asks her, "What are you then? What name would you put to yourself? You're not a wife or a widow. You're not a virgin. Tell me a name for what you are." So that's like just a big theme in the life of a woman, is what her relationship is to a man, and that's how she defines herself. You know, either you're a virgin or you're a slut, you're married or you're unmarried, or your husband has died and you've been used. So, you know, it's a lot of this play is a lot of like damned if you do, damned if you don't kind of situations. You're one or the other, you know, you're a whore or a saint. And this has been covered by a lot of other things. It's not a new idea. So I think this relates a lot to the Threepenny Opera in the way that the women are defined by their relationships to men. You know, Polly's whole Barbara song is about how she starts off by saying, "When I was a virgin, like 2 minutes ago, I used to believe the way that the world ought to be." She had this whole ideology, but now that she's not a virgin, it's different. And she sees the world differently. You know, and there are whores, there are the Mrs. Peachums, and, you know, there's Lucy, who throughout most of the show is seen as a mother, but it's fake. So, you know, she still could be a virgin. Like, that's not even guaranteed. She and Polly in the jealousy duet, like, goad each other and egg each other on about, like, imagining Mac with the other person, like, this whole fantasy, and, like, they mock each other and be like, "Oh, I bet you didn't even screw," like, because that's the defining feature of their relationship is sex. So there's all of that, and then there's this whole post-feminist idea that a woman's femininity is directly related to her body as feminine, and that she gets her like inward feminine characteristics from her outward feminine characteristics. So there's a song in Vinegar Tom that kind of addresses that, and it's called "Nobody Sings." And so it goes, "I woke up in the morning, blood was on the sheet. I looked at all the women when I passed them in the street. Nobody sings about it, but it happens all the time. I met an old woman who made my blood run cold. You don't stop wanting sex," she said, "just because you're old. Oh, nobody sings about it, but it happens all the time. I could be glad of the change of life, but it makes me feel so strange. If your life is being wanted, do you want your life to change? Oh, nobody sings about it, but it happens all the time. Do you want your skin to wrinkle and your cunt get sore and dry? And they say it's just your hormones if you cry and cry and cry. Oh, nobody sings about it, but it happens all the time. Nobody ever saw me," she whispered in a rage. "They were blinded by my beauty, now they're blinded by my age. Oh, nobody sings about it, but it happens all the time." So I feel like this song about, you know, experiencing your period, about becoming old, about just people not being able to look past your physical characteristics is a very good theme song for the Threepenny Opera. And just personally, for playing a whore, was that middle verse about how if your life is being wanted, do you want your life to change? You know, if men are wanting Nellie the way that she is, if men are wanting her to be this way, why would she change that? Because that's the value that she's getting from her life. You know, if Lucy is still being wanted by Mac because she's now, her physicality has changed and that she's carrying his child, then she needs to keep that because that's how he wants her. And, you know, like, with Mrs. Peachum, like, she still wants sex and Mr. Peachum doesn't want to give it to her. So, like, that second verse was definitely all about her. Like, it just is kind of terrible. So it's about women's relationships to men and how they gather their identity from that. There's so many more songs in Vinegar Tom that are really relatable. One of them is about a happy family, and I'm just going to read one of the stanzas because it's a longer song. So this would be about the woman's place as, like, bringing forth a nuclear family and keeping all that intact and caring for it. So, nobody loves a scold, nobody loves a slut, nobody loves you when you're old unless you're someone's gran. Nobody loves you unless you keep your mouth shut. Nobody loves you if you don't support your man. Oh, you can, have a happy family. So this song is a lot about, like, the country's stability is built on a strong family, and it's the woman's job to make that family strong by pleasing her man, because the man is going to set the tone for the family, and if he's not pleased by his wife, then it's not going to be a strong family, it's not going to be a strong country. So basically, this country is built on the repression of women and on the chauvinistic idea that men's happiness with their wives will make the country great or make it weak and vulnerable. So it makes your sexuality have a lot more power, actually, but it's not power for you. It's power that represses you. It doesn't give you any agency. There's no leverage to say that, like, oh, you should make me happy so I can make you happy so that the country will be strong and we'll have a great nation. It's a duty. It's a responsibility to make your husband happy. There's no leverage. You're just going to be tossed out and thrown away if you don't do that. So, this is like the real song of sexual slavery, basically. And then the last song that I want to read is directly addressing the damned if you do, damned if you don't thing. And it's called If You Float. So, pardon me. If you float, you're a witch. If you scream, you're a witch. If you sink, then you're dead anyway. If you cure, you're a witch, or impure, you're a witch. Whatever you do, you must pay. Fingers are pointed, a knock at the door. You may be a mother, a child, or a whore. If you complain, you're a witch, or you're lame, you're a witch. Any marks or deviations count for more. Got big tits, you're a witch. Fall to bits, you're a witch. He likes them young, concupiscent and poor. Fingers are pointed, a knock at the door. They're coming to get you. Do you know what for? So don't drop a stitch, my poor little bitch. If you're marking a spell, do it well. Deny it, you're bad. Admit it, you're mad. Say nothing at all. They'll damn you to hell. So it's the same thing just in regular life, that whatever women do, it's not good enough. You know, you're too feminine, you're too sexual, you're asking for it. You're too masculine, you're too aggressive, you're a bitch, and you're frigid, and you're cold. There's just no in between, there's no good way, to be a woman in this world. Both in the world of Vinegar Tom and in Threepenny Opera, and in the world that we live in, there's just no right way to do things. And this is kind of throwing it back to that idea of bourgeois feminism I talked about so long ago that it's still assuming that men are the norm and that whatever they do is the right way to do things, and so women have to do that and do it better in order to gain respect. And so this is kind of along that same vein that whatever women do is gonna be worse, gonna be weaker, because you're not a man, so it can't be right, it's going to be wrong. So, there's that. The last thing I wanted to say didn't have much to do with anything that I read in any of the plays that I read. The closest connection might be to Phaedra's Love, where Phaedra is ridiculed more for her improper lust of Hippolytus because she's royalty, because she's in the public eye. But that's a little bit more of a roundabout sort of analysis of where I'm going. It's not quite direct. So what I'm getting at is that women's bodies are public. That's how they're viewed. They are not a private individual. They're not a private entity. Like, anyone can judge you and your body, based on Vinegar Tom. Like, you got big tits, you're a witch. People are judging you on what your body looks like. And you don't belong to yourself. You belong to the public. And I think that's super true in the Threepenny Opera. Polly belongs to her parents. Anne Mac, she doesn't belong to herself. Same with Lucy. The whores obviously don't belong to themselves. They belong, their bodies are open for business. So they belong to anyone who will pay the right price, and they also belong to Jenny because she's the madam and she can tell them what to do. So just, no one has their own physical agency unless they've got a penis. And I experienced this just, normal. As a woman living in this world, we all know what that's like to get catcalled or to be approached in public by a man. That happens all the time. But this happened a lot more to me in Rarig when I was wearing my horror costume. And it wasn't vicious. Nothing was ever said that made me feel uncomfortable. In fact, most of the time, whenever people pointed out to me that I was a whore, it was, like, funny, or I went along with it. But it's just thinking back that the fact that I would walk around in this costume, and it was ridiculous. Like, the tits were huge. They looked very disproportionate on my body, so it was kind of a funny costume anyway. But people would make comments, just totally unsolicited, just by the fact that I walked out to get some water. I'd have people be like, "Hey, you look like a whore," and I'd be like, "I am a whore." My favorite comment was someone was like, "Laura, your boobs could cut diamonds." I thought that was funny and clever, but it's a costume. People know it's not real, but just the fact that people thought it was okay to comment on my boobs in public in front of a big group of people because I'm a woman, and more because I'm a woman who's clearly public property by what I'm wearing. Thinking back, that seems concerning to me. And definitely in the moment it was harmless. I'm just sort of thinking of, like, the meta ideology of all of it. I'm not angry or holding anyone personally responsible for, like, the oppression of women. But, my body didn't belong to myself, and especially when I was wearing that costume. It was open to anyone to look at, and that was the whole point. Obviously, that's the whole point. But there even was a really funny moment that I, like, shared with the cast because I thought it was hilarious that, like, during one intermission, I went to go, like, bug a friend who was sitting on the end, like, just right before the show started, and a friend sitting next to him who, I love and we were also friends was like, can I touch your boobs? And I was like, yes, of course. So I turned around to, like, the whole section of the audience just to, like, make a big thing of it. And so everyone saw her, like, grab my boob and, like, squeeze it, and, you know, it's foamy and whatever. But, I mean, for Nellie, for the whore, that's her body. You know, that was my body. That was the costume, the physical body mask that I was living in. And that it was just so clearly public property that someone asked if they could touch my boobs. And then I realized that I didn't belong to myself so much that of course I let them. Because who am I to say no? It's not my body. It doesn't belong to me. So that's what I'm thinking. And especially as I transition these posts into what I'm doing for my senior showcase performance, which is called I'm Dying to Be a Woman, is what parts of yourself do you kill to fill a certain role as a woman? So, what part of myself do I kill to allow someone to touch my boob in front of everyone, even if it's a foam boob and not my own? You know, what becomes real? What becomes like what you own? I'm just starting to ramble a lot more about this without having thought about it too much, so this is where I'm going to end, is you're damned if you do and damned if you don't, and your body is public property.